So today we're doing a deep dive into what is just. A century-long quest for justice. It's one of the most unparalleled stories in all of sports history. We're talking about the life and legacy of Jim Thorpe. We have gone through a really dense stack of historical records, official Olympic declarations, all of it focused on correcting what was just a profound institutional failure. So our mission today is to unpack his incredible journey, and we want to explore how the record was finally fully set straight on a really key date, July 15th, 2022.
That date is so important. It's really the capstone on a multi-generational effort. On that day, the International Olympic Committee confirmed what, frankly, the world knew for 110 years, that Jim Thorpe was the sole gold medalist in his two 1912 Olympic events. And, for listeners who might only know the name, you have to understand the sheer scale of his dominance. This is an athlete who was a world record-setting Olympic champion, a professional star in Major League Baseball, and the very first president of the organization that became the NFL.
Right. It's that intersection of just raw skill and sheer force of will that makes his story so magnetic. So let's figure out how this SAC and Fox Nation athlete, Watho Huck, which means bright path, how he could achieve such greatness, have it all erased by bureaucracy, and what it took to finally secure that restoration.
To really understand the man, you have to start in Indian Territory, near what's now Prague, Oklahoma. Thorpe's early life was, well, it was framed by hardship. There was one specific tragedy that really shaped his youth. He had a twin brother, Charlie, and they went to school together, but Charlie died of pneumonia when they were just 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and that loss, that immense loss, it contributed to a really difficult and restless adolescence for Jim.
And it wasn't really until he was at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania that his athletic career started to take shape.
Right.
Under the legendary coach Glenn "Pop" Warner.
That's right. And Pop Warner was known for being, let's say, very protective of his track athletes. He did not want them on the bruising football field.
So how did Thorpe even get on the field?
Well, this is a great story. He just couldn't hide his talent. There are these accounts of a moment when Thorpe, still in his street clothes, just walks by the practice field, and he just decides to try the high jump, spontaneously. He clears 5 feet 9 inches on his very first attempt, sets a new school record.
No way, in street clothes.
In street clothes. Warner saw this and just knew he had this raw, untapped potential. He had to completely change his plan for this kid.
And once he got on the football field, it was, he basically revolutionized the game.
Mm-hmm.
Running back, defensive back, punter, kicker. He was a force of nature, a 3-time All-American. And of course, there was that famous upset over Harvard where Thorpe kicked all 4 field goals to win the game 18-15.
Exactly. And that's still just scratching the surface of his versatility. He was great at lacrosse, at boxing, at tennis.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the best testament to his physical mastery comes from 1912, the very same year he was training for the Olympic decathlon. Maybe the most demanding athletic contest there is.
What?
He found the time to win the Intercollegiate Ballroom Dancing Championship.
You're kidding me. Football, track, and ballroom dancing.
Yep. Brute strength, precision, and complex footwork. He had it all.
Okay, so let's get to that Olympic moment. 1912, he's in Stockholm for the Summer Games. And this is huge because it's the official debut of the modern decathlon. And here's the detail that just blows my mind. Jim Thorpe had never competed in a decathlon before he got to Stockholm.
Never. And despite that, his performance is it's legendary. He wins gold in both the pentathlon, where he won 4 of the 5 events, and the decathlon. In that decathlon, he set a world record score of over 8,400 points. And just to put that in perspective, he beat the second-place finisher by nearly 700 points. That's not winning. That is total domination.
An unbelievable margin. And there's that incredible story about his composure, too, the one about his shoes.
Oh, yeah.
His track shoes were stolen right before the competition.
Stolen. So he was forced to compete wearing these mismatched replacement shoes. One was reportedly found in a trash can.
And he still won the gold.
Shattered world records in borrowed, ill-fitting shoes. It just speaks volumes about his focus.
And it all leads to this iconic moment.
One of the most famous moments in sports history, really. At the ceremony, King Gustav V of Sweden is presenting the prizes, and he says to Thorpe, "Sir, you are the greatest athlete in the world."
And Thorpe's reply is just perfect.
"Thanks, King."
Thanks, King.
He comes home a global celebrity. There's a massive ticker tape parade for him on Broadway.
Oh, that high point. It gave way to this massive institutional failure almost immediately.
Yeah, that celebration was very short-lived. The controversy started right after the games, and by 1913, it became the great injustice of his entire career.
So what happened?
Well, this takes us into the dark side of early 20th century sports. The IOC had these incredibly strict and frankly elitist amateurism rules.
Right, the idea that you couldn't be paid for sports at all.
At all. Any payment, no matter how small, for any sport, and you were out.
And Thorpe's so-called transgression was what? Playing some baseball?
Exactly. He played semi-pro baseball in the Eastern Carolina League in the summers of 1909 and 1910. He was paid, a tiny amount. The records show something like $25 to $35 a week. And crucially, he played under his own name. He wasn't hiding it.
And this is where that classism really comes into play.
It's all about classism. The rules were designed for wealthy white men, the quote-unquote gentleman athletes, who didn't need to earn money. But Thorpe came from poverty. He needed that money.
And plenty of other college athletes were doing the same thing, right?
Absolutely. White college athletes were playing professionally all the time, but they used fake names. They got away with it. Thorpe's honesty and his status as an indigenous man made him a very easy, very high-profile target.
And the way they went after him was so unfair procedurally, too.
Completely. The protest against him was filed in January 1913. That's a full 6 months after the Stockholm Games closed.
But the rules said.
The 1912 rules were clear. Any challenge had to be filed within 30 days. They just ignored their own rules to disqualify him.
And Thorpe knew it was a double standard.
He did. He wrote a letter to the AAU, basically pleading his case. He said he was, in his words, simply an Indian schoolboy and did not know all about such things. But he also pointed out he was just doing what several other college men had done, except they hid their names.
And that plea was just ignored.
Totally ignored. The IOC acted swiftly and harshly. They stripped him of his medals, his titles, his records.
And historians now look back on that as, well, one of the most egregious miscarriages of justice in sports history.
Absolutely. A decision that was so clearly rooted, not just in those rigid rules, but in racial and class bias. And just like that, the records were changed. Hugo Westlander from Sweden was named the decathlon champion, and Ferdinand Bai of Norway got the pentathlon gold.
But the story didn't end there, obviously.
Yeah.
It really just fueled this decades-long campaign.
A huge campaign, yeah. Led by his family, his supporters, people like the authors Robert Wheeler and Florence Ridlon, who fought for him for years.
And one of the biggest roadblocks to getting justice was, ironically, one of his old teammates.
Avery Brundage, yes. He was on the 1912 Olympic team with Thorpe. He later became the president of the IOC and was this stubborn, unyielding defender of that amateur principle.
He actively blocked any attempts to reinstate Thorpe.
For years. It wasn't until 1982, long after Brundage and Thorpe were gone, that the IOC finally cracked.
And they acknowledged the 30-day deadline error.
Right. They admitted they'd missed the deadline. So in 1983, they restored his medals posthumously. Thorpe had died back in 1953.
But, and this is a big but, they didn't fully correct the record, did they?
No. And this is so significant. They named him co-champion in both events.
Sharing
the gold with Wieslander and Bai. And for his supporters, that was just another insult. He didn't just win, he dominated. Calling him a co-champion felt like the IOC was trying to avoid admitting how wrong they'd been.
Which makes that 2022 decision so monumental.
It's everything. On July 15th, 2022, the IOC finally reinstated Jim Thorpe as the sole gold medalist in both events.
What was the final push that made it happen?
It was this extraordinary gesture of fair play from the other countries. The Olympic committees of both Sweden and Norway came forward. They confirmed that the families of both Wieslander and Bai had never actually accepted the elevated gold medals.
Oh.
They always believed Thorpe was the rightful sole champion. So it took the families of his competitors to essentially force the institution to finally reflect reality 110 years later.
And throughout those decades, even without the medals, his professional legacy was just, it was staggering.
Oh, absolutely. After the disqualification, he goes straight into pro sports. Plays 6 seasons in Major League Baseball for the Giants, the Reds, the Braves.
But his impact on professional football might be even bigger, historically.
I think so, yeah. He was the star player for the Canton Bulldogs, led them to 3 championships. And in 1920, when the organization that would become the NFL was founded, Thorpe was the biggest name in the game. They made him its first president, mostly to lend his star power and legitimacy to this brand new league.
And he kept playing until he was 41.
41. Incredible longevity. And that cemented his legend.
But his later life,
Yeah.
it was a real struggle, wasn't it?
A profound struggle. Despite being one of the most famous athletes on the planet, he dealt with poverty and alcoholism, which all got much worse during the Great Depression. He had to work odd jobs. He was a film extra in dozens of westerns, often just playing these stereotypical Indian roles.
And the contrast is just heartbreaking. In 1950, the Associated Press polls almost 400 sports writers to name the greatest athlete of the first half of the century. And Jim Thorpe wins. Overwhelmingly, he beats Babe Ruth, Jack Dempsey, everyone.
Right, so the man officially recognized by the press as the greatest athlete alive was, at that same time, struggling to make ends meet as a low-paid extra.
And that thread of controversy just never seems to end with him. It follows him all the way to his final resting place.
It does. Even after his death, this legal battle emerges. When he passed away, his third wife interrupted a traditional sack and fox burial ceremony in Oklahoma.
And she moved his remains to Pennsylvania.
To two small, struggling towns that were looking to merge and create a tourist attraction. They renamed the new town Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. His tomb is still there today.
Which led to his sons trying to get his remains back.
A very serious legal effort, yeah. They cited the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or ANEGI PRA. They argued that his remains were essentially being held for commercial purposes, which goes against the entire spirit of that act.
And that battle, even though the Supreme Court didn't hear the case, it really continues to this day on a cultural level.
It really does. It's this question of whether he should be a commercial entity for a town or be returned to his homeland.
His whole life is just such a profound case study. Athletic greatness achieved despite these incredible obstacles.
A powerful testament to Native resilience. And you have to remember, he did all of this before Native Americans were even granted full U.S. citizenship in 1924.
He used breaking world records for a country that didn't fully recognize him as a citizen. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
To think it took 110 years, 2 generations of advocacy, and the families of his rivals basically surrendering their medals for the record to finally reflect the truth.
Which I think raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. If a case this clear-cut, a man who won by almost 700 points, if that took more than a century to correct, what kind of ingrained societal resistance is there to suppressing a legacy of pure excellence? And what other, maybe more subtle injustices are still hiding under the surface of sports history, just waiting for their own bright path moment?
A truly difficult, unprecedented story. It's finally complete, but it's still raising questions. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
It was a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.